Recently, the issue of the military coup in Myanmar has been a big foreign policy issue, especially because this is one of the first foreign policy debacles in I'd say East Asia, which is a very important region, of course, because that's where China is located. And many of us have been questioning what Biden's approach to China will be, and what Biden's general approach to what Biden's approach to foreign policy will be in general. We've already seen that Biden has done a few good things. I mean, he's halting support for the Saudis in Yemen, which of course I agree with. But he's also done a few things that, I mean, I personally don't agree with, and that he plans on keeping troops in Afghanistan. He's probably going to keep troops in Syria and Iraq. And he's also, it looks like we won't be re-entering the Iran nuclear deal under him. But that's beside the point. What I want to talk about today is really the relationship between Myanmar and China, and how this is going to be impacted by the recent turn in events. So there's been, I guess, a rocky relationship between Myanmar and China. While we all know that China is one of the few countries that has actually been supportive of the military junta throughout history, it's not as black and white as it may seem. While in the beginning, both countries had pretty good diplomatic relations, they had a border dispute, and they were able to resolve this. Unlike China's border disputes with India, which are going on to this day and are continuing to ensue, they were able to resolve this. Although there were issues later on in terms of their relations, because when the military took control from the civilian government, and the Burma Communist Party was the main opposition to the military government, China was funding and sending weapons to the Burma Communist Party. Although once Deng Xiaoping took over in the 70s, this all changed, because Deng Xiaoping, I guess, had a more like realpolitik approach, whatever. I guess that's how I'd put it, in that he cared more about diplomatic and business relations as opposed to a principled approach to foreign policy, diplomacy. And he stopped funding the Communist Party, and he instead improved relations with the military junta. In addition, in 1997, when the West and the United States imposed sanctions and trade restrictions on Myanmar, China stepped in and was able to help Myanmar get through the economic issues it was having because of the sanctions and trade restrictions. So that might give us some foreshadowing as to what might happen now. Although, this relationship is kind of a yo-yo. It goes back and forth. The military junta did understand that it couldn't fully be reliant on China. It didn't want to fully be dependent on China. So it did start to return some democratic institutions until it returned the civilian government, which has now just been overthrown. As a result, Myanmar was able to open up trade relations with the West once again. Although this changed again when I think around in 2016, Suu Kyi's administration was criticized for their horrible leadership in the situation with the Rohingya Muslims, and she was criticized by the West, and as a result, guess what happened? Could you guess what happened? Yeah, so Myanmar went back to being heavily reliant on China. China stepped in. Suu Kyi joined the Belt and Road Initiative, the famous big infrastructure and trade initiative that China started spanning all across the world, from East Asia to Africa, I think even to Europe. So Myanmar joined the Belt and Road Initiative. And yeah, I mean, this is, if we examine history, and if history can predict what's going to happen now, what will happen is Myanmar, now that it has been rejected by the West and sanctions are most likely going to be put on Myanmar through Biden's executive order, this will force Myanmar to become reliant on China, like it has multiple times throughout its past. Now, this is obviously anything but what the U.S. would actually want. Isn't the U.S. supposed to be tough on China? Isn't that what Tony Blinken and Biden's administration said that they would be doing? That's the point. In my personal opinion, sanctions are really not effective at all. In this case, they're not only going to have the reverse effect, and they're going to make Myanmar part of China's sphere of influence, which is the main opposition to the United States sphere of influence. What will also happen is that, which I care more about, is that this will most likely hurt the people of Myanmar themselves. I mean, if China can, if China will backs up Myanmar's economy, as it has before, the effects might not be as bad, but still, I think the effects will be pretty bad now that Myanmar is probably going to be cut off from the West and the United States. And this is going to hurt the average person in Myanmar. It's probably not going to hurt the leadership. I mean, although Biden has said that the trade restrictions are meant to specifically hurt the coup leaders and their families and their business doings, I really don't think that that will come through in terms of what the U.S. has done with their other sanctions. In Iran, for instance, Democracy Now! Covered this just a few days ago. People have been really worried because really the sanctions have been decimating Iran, and it's driving the masses in Iran towards reactionary fundamentalist leaders and stuff like that, because they're being proven right that the U.S. is this evil empire that's out to get Iran. And the U.S. is I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of proving that. Like, that's honestly what they're doing. They're really hurting the average person in Iran with these sanctions, and it's unfortunate. And it looks like that won't come to an end, since Biden, like I said, will not be re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. So, you know, I think a similar thing will happen in Myanmar, in that I don't know if it's necessarily going to drive the people towards the military junta, because the people do seem pretty opposed to this, and they're in support of the civilian government. I don't think that they'll be able to have any sort of successful revolt, although they have been having big protests. But this will definitely have a negative effect. I would say, these sanctions. And this is, like I said, this is a just a glimpse of what Biden's foreign policy will look like, and what Tony Blinken's foreign policy strategy is. I mean, Tony Blinken does not have a good past. He was an orchestrator of the overthrow of Gaddafi, which was disastrous, really disastrous. So, you know, I never had much hope in Tony Blinken and his leadership, but yeah, I mean, it's the unfortunate truth of what's going on right now. And as we can see throughout history, sanctions just don't work in punishing Myanmar, and they just get help from China, and they drive, and obviously we're basically almost having we've been having a trade war with China, and this is really gifting China, and they probably love this. China hasn't even identified it as a coup. They said that it was a major reshuffling of the cabinet or whatever. Yeah, no, I don't think so. That's not really what happened. This was not democratic. It was a coup. So that's the unfortunate situation that's happening in Myanmar, and the unfortunate line of action that the U.S. is taking, that I think is a major mistake. So let's just stay tuned and see what happens. And I know I haven't been saying this, but I really would appreciate it if you enjoyed this video. If you could subscribe, it would be encouraging, so I can make more of these. So yeah, like, subscribe, or share, whatever. That's it.